Hello. We are still at Lepenski Vir. A lot of millennia ago, Lepenski Vir was, let me remind you, from 9500, something like that, beginning of the 10th millennium before Christ, until 5500. So it lasted really, really long. So today we're going to say something about what was their food, what were they eating, what were they doing in everyday life, and a little bit about their life. Okay, so how do we know what were they eating when that happened so long time ago? We have few auxiliary sciences such as that are helping archaeology, such as, for example, archeozoology, that is studying and analyzing remains of the animals, such as bones, horns, then teeth, some shells, for example, snail shells. But in what shape? For example, if we have some kind of a tool that's made from an antler or from horn, okay, or we have some jewelry that is made from those shells, for example. Okay, then we have as a second science archeobotany, and that is the analysis of the traces of flora in the archaeological layers. Those are such as seed, fruit, pollen, wood, some cells, some molecules. So what was the flora at that time, and what were they using for in their everyday life, what were they eating? And we have, for example, the third thing, the analysis of the stable isotopes in the bones of people, and that means you are what you eat. You know how they say, and that is carbon, sulfur, nitrogen in the collagen of human and animal bones. So we can then see what were they eating. They were eating fish. For number one. Numero uno was fish in the Danube, because that culture was on the Danube, and that was their main. So those were fishes from river fish, okay, such as carp, catfish, pike, trout, perch, and some specific anadromous fish, and that means they live in the sea, but they come upstream in the river for spawning. Okay, and those are that was the sturgeon, big, very big sturgeons, up to a couple of meters, but not 2, but 3 or 4 meters long, and up to 500 kilograms heavy, and that's really a big fish. Okay, and they had caviar as well. Okay, and we see one thing that's happening. They were now planning how to hunt and how to fish, and they were it was a teamwork. So as a social category, teamwork, and they some kind of a specialization started. So, you know, I told you that the culture of Lepenski Vir consisted of few those villages, and each one had its favorite fish, for example. So we know that the catfish was eaten at Padina mostly, not just that, but mostly that. And for example, the sturgeon at Lepenski Vir, and the cyprinids at Vlasac. For example, we know that because of the remains of bones. Okay. And then those wild animals, that is game, they hunted deer, wild boar, and wild oxes. So what was from plants? They the basis of their diet was fish and meat. The majority of things they ate was that, and plants were just like I cannot say decoration, but it was not that important. But it varied a lot, and they had like an addition. Those plants were, for example, they consumed cones and flowers of plants, and but as a spice or as a tea because of their healing properties. Okay, then wild forest honey, some pine seeds, we call it pignole. Then at Vlasac they had cornel, dogwood, hazelnut, and then seed of some blade plants, and then some tubers and kernels of nuts, etc., etc. So different weeds. Some kind of those like fruits were ripe at the end of August and the beginning of September. And for example, hazelnuts at the end of September, beginning of October. So they knew the season when to pick up and when to eat something. And we know that, for example, in the neighborhood of Lepenski Vir, there were oaks and wild pears and wild quinces. What was interesting, at few grindstones or grindstones, you know, that thing that you use to grind seed or something that you want to eat, we have granules of starch. And you get starch from plants with tubers or nuts. And that means that they could make supplies. So the fruit, they ate it at once, okay? Immediately. They were eating fruits immediately, but and raw or crude. But those supplies that they could make with grindstones meant that they could survive the winter better, etc. Okay, what else was happening? So first the fish, their menu, their diet, and then the meat, and especially in that Neolithic layers, so from the end of the 7th millennium, that means 6,300, okay, they were eating more and more cereals. Okay, you know, Neolithic times, the Neolithic revolution, domestication of animals, ceramic, and beginning of agriculture. So those cereals, okay, they were eating. For example, Lepenski Vir and Aymane, they eat less fish than the those who live at Vlasac, Padina, and Hajdučka Vodenica. Okay, so we know those things. So what were they producing from tools? The things that they needed to hunt and to and for fishing tools. Okay, from bones and from stone, they made different hooks, different sizes, different hooks, harpoons. Then we have a lot of weights for fishing nets. Okay, and those weights looked like a boulder, like a stone that's egg-like. Okay, and it has at the in the middle, it has a kind of a dent, a kind of a gutter where you can, they made that artificially, where you can put some kind of a string or the end of fishing net or something like that. Okay. What else? They had some kind of scepters or scepters that were carved. In the monography about Lepenski Vir from Dragoslav Srejović, they were put in religious cult objects, okay? But maybe some of them, if not all, but some of them maybe could be some, perhaps were flails. That means for to stun those big fishes. So when you get the fish on the shore, you just, you know, punch it with that thing. It's like a club, like a rod. Okay, especially because we found some of them broken. Okay, so let's just remind you about the similarity of those sculptures and the fishes. We are going to talk about that tomorrow, and you're going to see the shape of the mouth, and then you have some like scales, like fish scales. Some of those figurines have, etc. And then it's very interesting that inside the houses, those sculptures had a very specific place, okay, very near that altar that we were talking about, and that means that they represented something for the Lepenski Vir people. They represented something connected with their ancestors, okay, and maybe those fishes are connected to the afterlife and the souls of the deceased. Maybe we're gonna talk about that tomorrow. So basically the sturgeon for Lepenski Vir people was the food for their body, but for their soul as well. And you know, much later that even in Christianity and you know, Jesus and everything, but that fish has an important role, that in the sense that fish was a kind of a symbol of Christianity. So that connection with religion is well known, maybe from those times or even earlier. Okay, we won't speculate anything. So what else? Of course, the animals that they hunted and that they were eating served as a secondary raw material. That means they were using the whole animal. Nothing was thrown away. Even the teeth, for example, for jewelry, or horns, antlers, skin, fur, everything. Okay. About 7,000 years before Christ, at Vlasac, and Vlasac is about that place 3 kilometers down near Lepenski Vir, okay, down the Danube. Was for the first time the wolf is domesticated, okay, and for the first time we have a dog, okay. So from the wolf they were, you know, domestic did that, and we have a dog in the Lepenski Vir culture, okay. There is one contra-intuitive thing, and that is, you remember that house 69 and that skeleton in the, let me say, yoga position. We're going to talk about him again, but I wanted to tell you something. People from Lepenski Vir were healthier than the later on Neolithic people, and that means, for example, that person from the house 69 was, we call it Valentino because she was beautiful as Rudolph Valentino. He was 1 meter 80 high, and he was 70 years old, and he had all of his teeth. Okay, he was extremely healthy, maybe because of the diet and climate, I don't know why. Or the biggest change was those cereals that the Neolithic people started eating much, much more than those from Mesolithic times. Maybe that's the difference. Okay, and at the end, I just wanted to tell you something that is obvious, but I'll tell you. So they were carving their gods those figurines were from stone. So stone was keeping those deities and those godly shapes. But in Neolithic times, at the end of Lepenski Vir, with ceramic, they started making their gods from the soil, from that not in stone anymore. So that's it for today. Hope you're all okay. Stay safe. Be careful what to do. Don't overdo it, whatever you do. And see you tomorrow.